For reaching 1000 members on our Discord server, we have launched the 6x6 challenge. Everyone out of the community had the task to create a 6x6 vehicle, either an already existing one or a complete custom design. So in this video, we're not only going to take a look on how I have created the 6x6 Lada Niva, but we will also go ahead and check out of the community submissions. So let's start right into chapter 1, getting the blueprints. So pretty obvious, as this is a custom design, I couldn't just go ahead and type in Lada Niva 6x6 into the blueprint.com and download the blueprints. So I just went ahead and searched for the normal car inside of my browser, opened up my best friend that is called ChatGPT, copy and paste in the completely stock Lada Niva and have asked him if he could transform this car into a 6x6. And actually, the result was freaking good. But wait. Is this an 8x8? As the first attempt was really great, I've tried it out with another reference image and the result once again was completely perfect. But after a couple of tries, he actually was able to create a Lada Niva 6x6. So the last thing left to do was to transform this car into a blueprint, and all I can say is that ChatGPT completely cooked with this one. Not this one of course, but this one. So after spending half an hour on creating these images, I had one blueprint and 3 reference images, so I could go ahead and start with chapter 2, setting up the blueprints. I started by adding in the dimensions of the normal Lada Niva into the dimensions of the cube, but after adding in the Y value, I noticed that all of the other values were missing on the blueprint, so I had no clue on how I could continue this model and I completely panicked. And I hope you didn't believe this, as I just went ahead and googled the dimensions of the car and then sized the cube with the rest of the values. I've then inserted the basic Lada Niva blueprint and I first scaled up the side view to the size of the cube, then I duplicated the side view, rotated it and aligned the front view, and I've repeated the same process until all of the views were aligned. Then I also took the 6x6 blueprint and tried to align it with the basic Lada Niva, and I mean, it wasn't looking too bad, but at this point I had no idea on if it would work or not. I've quickly set up the other views as well, and after this I could finally start with the modeling part with chapter 3. The hood. I've merged a cube at the center to be left with only one single vertex and I've placed it to the beginning of the hood. As usual, I have extruded this vertex to the right side to the end of the hood. With Ctrl and R, have added in some vertices in between and have aligned them onto the blueprint line. Then I extruded this vertex all the way to the front and then all the way to the left. And as I obviously don't want to model 2 sides of the car, I have added in a mirror modifier. I took the vertices from the side of the hood and have duplicated them to the middle of the hood, and with that frame ready, I could go ahead and use the grid fill option to get the complete hood. After this, I only had to go ahead and rescale some vertices up onto the blueprint line, and then I took this vertex right here and have extruded it to trace down the rest of the blueprint of the hood. Then I could go ahead and fill in the faces, and at this point it was looking more blocky than the basic cube, and to make it look a little bit smoother I went ahead and have added in a bevel. By the way, I have something really awesome for you before we continue. If you're enjoying my Blender videos, I actually have a community called Low Poly Garage. Not only all of my courses are available there, but I'm also very active in the community myself, which means that you can share your projects and not only get reviews and answers from the community, but also personal answers and reviews from me. I am also sharing a lot of project files, blueprints and other resources to help you improve. So if this sounds like something you would be interested in, then go ahead and check out the first link inside of my description. So after the bevel, the hood was finished and I could continue with chapter 4, the front bumper. I took some vertices from the hood and have extruded them down onto the grille area. I then also took some vertices from the side and have extruded them into the inside of the car to recreate the detail that I could see on the reference image. And as the detail goes all the way to the back of the car, I've also extruded these vertices to the front door. I then took the vertices from the top grille area and have duplicated them down, and I also continued on the side of the car by extruding all of these vertices down. As the detail ends at this point right here, I've again extruded these vertices to the outside and then took a vertex and have extruded it by hand to recreate the front wheel arch. At the end right here, I've merged these vertices together and therefore have created a triangle, and as this wasn't enough, while filling in these faces right here, I have created one more triangle. And after cutting this, I've realized that I've spammed Ctrl Z to undo this, and instead have added in a loop cut to the bottom and then have filled in this area with 2 quads. I then continued on the front bumper by extruding all of these vertices down and just scaling them a little bit, and as I wanted to round up the area at the headlights, I have added in a bevel to the vertices, and after this had had to go ahead and fix up the topology again. After this I went ahead and have created the rest of the front wheel arch. Then I took some nice pictures of the current model and have shared them inside of our Discord server. After extruding some vertices to the beginning of the windshield, I continued with chapter 5, the front door. I first took the top edge and have extruded all the way back to the end of the front door, and to create a little bit more of depth I have also extruded these vertices up. As the front door goes all the way up to the roof, I have also started to recreate the A-pillar, and therefore I also started to kind of recreate some basic shapes of the roof. Just like on the headlights, I have also beveled this vertex right here to create a rounding, and then went ahead and connected the A-pillar to the B-pillar. I've then also extruded these vertices up to create even more faces, and although this is not part of the front door, I also started to work on the roof. Continuing on the B-pillar, I duplicated the vertices from the left to the right side and then started to fill in the faces. And as this is still a chapter of the front door, I continued on the detail of the front door. And after adding in the needed loop cuts to all of the sides, I went ahead and filled in all of the faces above the detail. With that part finished, I somehow stopped to work on the front door and have continued with chapter 6, the back door. And at this point you might say like, what the fuck are you talking about? This car doesn't even have a back door. And I actually only realized it when I started to model the back door. So let's quickly go ahead and rename this chapter and then continue by extruding these vertices up just like on the front door to create the depth. Then I extruded the vertices at the back right here so that I could go ahead and connect them with the roof. I then also traced down the other blueprint line to create even more details. At this point I quickly took a look on how the model is looking with the 6x6 blueprint, and I actually had to realize that the blueprint is completely trash, so I just continued with the basic Niva blueprint. In addition to the blueprint, I've also downloaded some Mercedes G6x6 reference images, and with that done, I continued with chapter 7, the roof. I added in some loop cuts to the flat faces that I already had, aligned them onto the blueprint line from the front view, and I filled in the gap with faces. For the back, I first extruded this vertex all the way to the right side and then continued with the same steps until the roof was finished. To kinda get the shape that I was trying to recreate, I extruded the detail all the way to the back, and only with that I actually realized on how big that car will get. After this, I continued on the front door, which we have started some chapters ago, and I also think that at this point I've completely lost my mind because of the topology that I've created at this area right here, and filling in this area right here with a loop cut from the bottom and then 3 quads is of course way better. Modeling the front door was quite simple, as I've just extruded the vertices to the back and then I filled in all of the faces, and after I replaced some vertices to make them a little bit more fitting with the 6x6 blueprint that I had, I continued with chapter 8, the back fender. I started by creating the back wheel arch with the basic Niva blueprint, and as this is an off-road vehicle, I've made it wider looking from the top view. From here on I could just go ahead and fill in all of the faces. I then duplicated the basic Niva side view blueprint and have moved it back. With that I could extrude this vertex onto the blueprint line to create the rest of the back wheel arch. The AI generated Niva was looking kinda bad from the back, so to model the trunk in chapter 9 I have used the basic Niva reference images, and to recreate it quite accurate I have once again duplicated the basic Niva side view blueprint, and with that I could start to trace down the blueprint for the trunk area. When I was about to align the vertices from the back view, I realized that the front view vertices disturbed my view at the back, so I quickly went ahead and hid off the vertices from the front to get a clear look at the back. I then took a vertex from the C-pillar and have extruded it all the way back to match up with the blueprint line, and then continued by creating loop cuts and filling in of the faces for the complete back fender area. The trunk itself was quite easy to recreate, as I could just go ahead and mostly extrude the vertices all the way to the right side, and after I have created the last faces at the back bumper area, the complete back of the car was finished, and I could continue with chapter 10, the fender flares. To start with them, I've duplicated all of the vertices from the front wheel arch and then have separated them into a new object. From the front view I have extruded them to the outside, scaled them twice to the middle point, and after taking a look by rotating the view, I made it even wider. I then adjusted the front and the back by sliding some vertices, and from the reference image at the bottom right you can see that I have recreated the fender flares of the Mercedes G 6x6, and to recreate the ones at the back I of course also duplicated the vertices and then basically repeated the same steps like on the front. To get a better understanding on how big or wide I have to make the fender flares, I have added in a basic cylinder to recreate the wheel out of it, With that I knew exactly on how much space I had left to recreate the back fender flare, and after once again sliding the vertices at the beginning and at the end, the fender flares were mostly finished and I could continue with chapter 11, the front grille. After duplicating the outline vertices, I have extruded them to the front, then I created some loop cuts and have slided them to the right and connected them. With that I could fill in this face and I have inserted it just a little bit. I've inserted it once more and then I've used the loop tool circle option to create the shape for the headlight. I've then also started to model the headlight itself, and my goal was to make it a little bit more up to date. Therefore I created a basic round neon daytime running light, and after I have added in the first material I have also made the headlights glow, and with a new cube added to the scene I have also modeled the low beam headlight out of it. For the front grille itself I extruded these vertices back and filled in the face, then I duplicated the vertices from the bottom and have moved them up, and to get the whole grille I repeated it all the way to the top, and to add in a little bit more of details I've also recreated the vertical lines. After applying the rest of the materials, the front grille was finished and I could continue with chapter 12, the front bumper. For this I've added in a new cube to the scene and have scaled them down. After it had the size that I needed, I could just go ahead and add in a bevel to all of the outline edges. With the shape of the front bumper, the side flare was looking really bad, so I quickly fixed it up, and to add in more details and depth I have extruded the corner of the front bumper and then also extruded these faces into the inside. With that I finished off the front bumper by separating them into different objects and applying the right materials, and then continued with chapter 13, the taillights. I couldn't just go ahead and recreate the normal Lada Niva taillights as they were a little bit outdated compared to the new ones that I have created for the headlights. So after creating the basic black frame, I have duplicated all of the outline vertices, created and inserted the face, made some cuts with the knife tool, and then scaled the vertices to make the faces even. I've created a new material, and with that the new modernized taillight was ready. Therefore I continued with chapter 14, the windows. Once again I first duplicated the outline vertices, and with that created a basic black frame for the window. Then I duplicated the basic black frame and slided some vertices to create a chrome element, and as the back window has the same parts I repeated the same steps. I then noticed that I need to add in a little bit more depth to the window, so I moved them into the inside and then extruded the vertices from the car body by the same amount. For the windows itself I basically just took the outline vertices and pressed F to fill in the face, and as the windshield was consisting out of the same parts I again repeated the same steps. With that, 3 out of the 4 glass parts were ready, and I decided to continue with chapter 15, the rims. I quickly searched up some off-road rims, and I thought that this one right here would fit the car quite well, and in this case ChatGPT was able to create a really good blueprint for it. So in Blender I started by adding in a new circle to the scene and changing the amount of vertices. Once the circle was on the right place I have set the cursor into the middle of the circle, and then inserted the blueprint for the rim. By extruding the vertices to the 3D cursor I have created only one segment of the complete rim, and after adding in a bunch of loop cuts I was able to create the holes inside of the rim. I added in a new circle to create the place for the bolt, and of course have filled in all of the faces with a new circle that I have shaped to the shape that I wanted the rim to have. I could go ahead and project the faces of the rim to the new circle. Then I added in some depth by extruding off these edges to the back, tried to fill in the faces at the back as good as possible, and with that one segment ready I could go ahead and rotate it along the 3D cursor to get the complete rim. After making some small adjustments the rim was finished, and I could continue with chapter 16, the tire. I am actually not good at modeling the tire, so the first thing that I've created was a basic cylinder of a tire. Then I created some loop cuts to add in some depth to it, and last but not least I've added in a bevel to the outline edges. For the tire threads itself I took a single segment of the tire and basically just bammed some loop cuts and some extrusions, and after doing this for 10 straight minutes I could also go ahead and rotate the segment of the tire and then call it a day. Though to finish the complete car we also need to continue with chapter 17, the back bumper. As the back bumper was basically the same like the front one, I just took the front one and duplicated it to the back, made some simple adjustments, and with that already finished it and continued with chapter 18, 19, the side skirt. The first thing I did was to adjust the car body just a little bit, and after I took a look on the reference image, I also knew that I had to adjust the fender flares. After doing so, I took the faces from the bottom of the car body and have duplicated them. Then I took the faces and have extruded them to the outside, added in a bevel to off the outline edges, and then increased the size of the beginning and the end of the side skirt. The last detail that I've added in was to extrude the top face a little bit down. Then I only needed to go ahead and apply off the materials, and then I could continue with chapter 19, the pickup area. I started by creating the back glass part, but as this is the same process like the other 3 glass parts that we have already created, we can just go ahead and skip this. For the pickup area, I orientated on the G6x6 reference images, and I first extruded the vertices down. Then I extruded some vertices into the middle point and filled in the gap by filling in the faces. Then I extruded the vertices once more and I've also moved them down. Then I extruded the vertices down once more and filled in the gap by extruding them all the way to the middle. I filled in the rest of the gaps by filling in the faces and scaling the vertices. With that, the modeling part was finished and I could go ahead and separate it into different objects to apply the right materials, and I went ahead and added in a classic wood material to it. After this, I've added in a new circle to the scene to model the bars out of it, and I have to say that this was one of the hardest part on the whole car, as it was quite hard to create these smooth circular shapes, but at least I could go ahead and fill in the gaps in between the circles with the bridge edge loops tool, and actually it came out looking pretty good at the end. So with that, the pickup area was finished and I could continue with chapter 20, the underbody. The first step when creating the underbody is to duplicate off the outline vertices from the complete car. Then I start by creating the depth for the rear arches and creating some big angles. Then I just extruded off the vertices to the middle and filled in the rest of the gaps. And with that, already finished with the underbody and continued with chapter 21, the details. I obviously already created a lot of details, but before I could say that the model was finished, I also created some details like the door handle for example, but it is nothing special as it wasn't even harder than just extruding some faces. After creating the door handle, I started to create some windshield wipers, and as I had no idea on how to really do them, it was looking quite messy all of the time, and I also think that I have used a very hard perspective to create a connection. But after struggling for quite some time, the first windshield wiper was finished and I've placed it to match up with the car, and then duplicated this one windshield wiper to the left side to have 2. I then took a basic face and have modeled out a very cubey side mirror out of it, but after adding in a bevel it was actually looking quite decent. I've also added in some details to the windshield by cutting out a black frame with the knife tool. For the exhaust, I again took the inspiration from the G-Wagon, and both of these exhausts have improved the car by a lot. To create some more details to the car body, I have added in some car panel gaps for the hood, for the front door and also for the trunk. And the last thing that I have created was a basic axis and a basic differential. After this, the complete car model was finished and I only struggled to find out what color matches the car the best. But let's go ahead and find this out in chapter 22, the final render. As you can see, I decided to color this car in this dark green tone, and for this submission I have also decided to create a really nice looking render scene, and compared to the Ford Ranger Raptor that I've created in the last episode, this is looking way better, and it was quite easy to create as I could just go ahead and use the assets out of my Blender beginner course. Right now you have only seen my submission, so let's also go ahead and take a look on the community submissions in chapter 23. As the voting is still ongoing, we are only going to take a look on the current state, but otherwise I wouldn't be able to finish the video in time. We had a total of 13 submissions, so let's go ahead and start with place number 5 that is currently held by 3 people, each having 15 votes. The first one is my comp ass, so let's just go ahead and skip this, and the second one is Tiramisu. He has created this beautiful looking Hummer H2 I think it is, and as the car isn't big enough, he of course also added in some more boxes to the roof. The headlight design makes the car look 10 out of 10 aggressive, so it's definitely worth being that high in the voting. The third one on place number 5 is V Flavor, and he has transformed a Fiat 500 into a 6x6 monster, and we can definitely go ahead and appreciate the renderings that we have, because he has literally spent hours for them. Coming on place number 4 with currently 18 votes, we have the submission from King Alex. As you can see, he's not only made a 3D model, but a complete horror movie cover called The Pills How Roads Should Never Be Taken. But yeah, the other renders are looking quite cute. On place number 3, with currently 19 votes, we have the submission from Silbergrau. Why do I pronounce this like I'm not German? It's called Silbergrau. Anyways, he has created this Plymouth Roadrunner as a 6x6 version, and I have no idea on if it is a render in Blender or if it was imported into some game engine, but for me it kinda looks like Euro Truck Simulator 2. But nevertheless, the model looks completely flawless and is definitely worth being on place number 3. Coming closer to the top on place number 2 with currently 20 votes, we have the submission from Granty, and I think that he took his little Tykes experience a little bit too serious with this one. The render scene looks like a garage from a game, and by the stats on the left side I can definitely tell that the car looks like it wouldn't handle any curve. And on the current place number 1 with currently 21 votes, we have Jazz. And he did something that no one else did. He did not model a car, but a bike. And now just go ahead and imagine yourself driving with this thing to school with all of your gang behind you. I can certainly tell that all of the girls would look at you driving by, so once anyone engineers this, I will definitely go ahead and buy myself one. You can also go ahead and check out all of the other submissions on the Discord server that didn't make it into the top 5. And if you're at this point interested in how to create a complete low poly or high poly car in Blender, or if you want to go ahead and take a look on the project files of the Lala Niva 6x6, you can find all of the mentioned things inside of my school community with the first link inside of my description. The next event will be either around about Germany, France or Great Britain, so go ahead and make sure to join the Discord server to participate in the voting for the next event, and of course to participate in the event itself. My kings and queens, I wish you all the best for the future, and we will see us in the next video.